Hello and welcome to the reaction. We are reacting to the Celtic AGM. I'm your host, Christopher Gallagher, and delighted to say I'm joined by Claire Wilde. Hello, Claire, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Lovely to see you. We're also joined by our very good friend Martin from the Celtic Collective. Hello, Martin, how are you, sir?
Hi, Chris. I'm in utter shock, but other than that, I'm doing well, thank you.
Yes, the three of us were in attendance at the AGM today, which was, as Martin said, shocking. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the kind of updates online, but before we break it down a little bit, Martin, it's an hour since we made our way back from Celtic Park. How are you feeling, and what's your kind of general thoughts on it overall?
Like I said, I'm in utter shock, to be honest. I'm in disbelief at what occurred, what got said. I was actually in disbelief as the meeting progressed, but how it ended. And the statement, which I'm sure we'll go on to, if read by Ross Desmond on behalf of his dad, was probably one of the most shocking, disgusting, unbelievable things that I've ever heard. And I would class it as sort of one of the lowest points in my Celtic sporting life.
I thought it was, yeah, absolutely, and I thought it was volatile, I thought it was inflammatory, and it felt like it, and we'll certainly speak of that in a little bit more detail, but it felt like it was written and kind of performed to get a reaction. Claire Wilde, how are you feeling? What's your this is the first AGM you've been at as well, and you know, like myself, we didn't really know what to expect. How are you feeling after it?
I'm feeling similarly. I mean, the Ross Desmond statement was off the charts. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And yet I could as well. Like, there was a lot about what happened this morning that I was sort of, you know, that as so often happens with Celtic, you're like really shocked at the same time as thinking, of course, this is how it's playing out, because there was bits of it that just didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make no mistake about it, Ross Desmond's statement, or Dermot Desmond's statement, it was pre-planned, it was written, it wasn't as a result of the sort of earlier disruptions that isn't what led to the statement. That statement was always going to be read out at that AGM. That statement was a declaration of war on the Celtic supporters. It was a complete and utter declaration of war. The gloves are well and truly off as far as they're concerned, and that they're coming after us as a support.
And you said that that it was almost as if as soon as there was interruptions to that Lowell read out that it was being closed, as almost as if it was pre-planned.
They had no intention of answering any questions or facing up to the support today. Even if there was no, I mean, there was some sort of booing and heckling, obviously there was red cards, but had none of that occurred, that statement that was read out by Desmond was designed to provoke. It was designed to get a reaction, and ultimately it was designed to end the meeting so they didn't have to face up to the support.
Yeah.
I don't agree with a lot of what Brendan Rodgers said at all. I don't like Brendan Rodgers, but he was absolutely bang on the money. They are absolute cowards. They're absolute cowards. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Claire, in regard to, well, as I say, we'll break it down, but the room itself was, it just, as soon as the board walked in, it was palpable. What did you make of the kind of setup to that?
I mean, the other thing to remark upon is that it wasn't just the room, there were other rooms. There was a lot of people in attendance today, and they kind of made a big show of making sure that everyone was included. But you could tell that, I think what's going to happen is that obviously this will be painted as what Ross Desmond referred to as the disruptive element or whatever. It absolutely wasn't that. We were sat around people who we had never met before. We weren't part of the collective, weren't part of anything to do with us.
They had their red cards, and they
had their red cards. They were voting. They had their voting intentions. We chatted to them, and you know, if people try and present it that it was just that one element, then that's false.
What was funny to me, so I'm unlike you guys, I go every year, and despite what Peter Lawwell said, which we'll touch on that later, I go every year, and ordinarily they come out to like silence and a rapturous applause and all that sort of stuff. So they obviously knew this wasn't coming, because what happened today, and I don't know if you guys picked up on it, Jeremy McCulloch was reading the sort of house rules, as he always does. Normally he'll read the house rules and then the board will appear. The board appeared like during the house rules, almost trying to sort of sneak on stage.
Yeah.
So they knew exactly the depth of feeling in the room.
Yeah. Celtic have released a statement. Do you know?
Has Dermot been let loose again?
Let me read out the statement. So we'll kind of to be honest, not much happened in terms of, questions or any of that stuff, resolutions at the AGM, so we will cover that. But let me read out the statement the Celtic have released. Regrettably, due to the continuing disruptive conduct of a small number of individuals preventing the orderly management of today's AGM, we were required to conclude the meeting earlier than we had planned. Such conduct is completely unacceptable and hugely disappointing. And while today's events are completely out with our control, clearly we regret the impact on our shareholders. So the people who were making noise were not shareholders, is
exactly.
that? Who were deprived of the opportunity to take part in an orderly and constructive meeting. Chairman Peter Lawwell called a poll on the resolutions at the end of the meeting, the results of which will be made available. Did he?
I'm assuming he's done that privately. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, because we didn't have the chance to poll.
Yeah, there would have been polling cards. They'd collected that in, but listen, we all know that Desmond's votes will rule the roost anyway, but there was polling cards taken in at the end. My understanding, and I am not an expert on this, so please don't take this as fact, but my understanding is they would be expected to have a rescheduled AGM at a later date, so we would expect that to happen. Yeah,
the results of which will be made available once counted and verified by a registrar Computershare, should any shareholders wish. They're making out let's kind of strip away all
they're making out exactly what we thought they would, which is that it was a small disruptive element that were in there to ruin things, when actually what's happened is they have, like you said, it was all pre-planned. They pushed the support to this point by refusing to engage in any meaningful way, and this was the inevitable outcome of it.
Yeah,
it might only have been a fraction of the room who participated in sort of some booing and heckling. However, the participation in actually the red cards actually painting the bigger picture.
Yes.
There would have been some people who maybe wouldn't necessarily have wanted to sort of boo or heckle, but who are vehemently opposed to the board. And I think that's the sort of bigger picture that should be focused on here, is the amount of people in the room who were so clearly opposed and wanting change. And I think that was quite clear and actually pleasantly surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I took a look around and there was red cards right at the back of the room. There was red cards in the middle of the room, and obviously everyone who was part of the collective was kind of near the front.
Well, we ran out. I think that the guys who ordered them probably underestimated the demand for them. So some people who wanted to take one, we never had enough to go around. So
I'm genuinely, this is a reaction, and my reaction is still I'm kind of a little bit in shock. But we should kind of break down what actually happened. Claire, now we were proxies. We don't have shares, but we were proxies, and Martin, you kind of you helped us sort that out and stuff. So, but when we turned up at 9:00. The doors were supposed to open at 9:00. They kept us out waiting a little bit longer.
You've been before, is that normal?
I don't normally go that early, because normally obviously the demand isn't as high. I had visions of Lawwell and Nicholson watching us from above, fucking throwing the fingers saying, I hope it's freezing, you bastards.
Hope it snows.
I don't know if that was normal behaviour, no, but it was freezing. When did we get in? About half 9, something like that?
9:20, something like that. So they kept us waiting a little bit, 20 minutes or so. In terms of going in and setting up and setting out, well, actually, see, before we get there, do you think the collective has made its point with what's happened at today's AGM?
I mean, I think human nature kicked in there, to be honest. There was no, there wasn't any real plans to, in fact, there was no plans to sort of walk out during the videos or anything like that. That was just sort of human nature, and emotion kicked in because, the arrogance demonstrated by Lawwell minutes before, I think surprised anybody. So what happened, and I'm sure we'll get into it, is they done their usual introductions. They walked on the stage and were met with really, really loud booing and heckling. So the room, or I would suggest the vast majority of the room made it clear. Made the dissatisfaction clear. Law went through the introductions and stuff, introduced Martin O'Neill and Elena and stuff. And then they went to move on to the videos. So for anybody who doesn't know the ordinary AGM, has never been to an AGM, they always show these videos. So they're pre-recorded videos where the CEO, the chairman and the CFO, they're designed to kill time, because they don't want to face up to questions, and B, essentially tell the room and boast about how great they are. The decision was made that this was a really important AGM due to the depth of feeling and the support and what's going on within the club at the moment. So the vice chair and member of the collective, Jeanette Finlay, raised a proposal, as she's absolutely perfectly entitled to do, that they skip the videos and get straight to the formal business, and then we've got more time for question and answers. Jeanette approached the microphone was turned off, and she then approached the chair, Peter Lawwell. Peter Lawwell spoke to her like he was a headmaster. You're not allowed, return to your seat. That served only to annoy, again, not just the collective. I think there was maybe only a couple of rows, maybe 2-3 rows of the collective, but it served to annoy the room, who again booed and heckled and asked for Jeanette to be listened to. And instead of doing that, Lawwell called an adjournment for 30 minutes, which was really most unusual. What any sensible calm chair could have and should have done at that point was just taking a poll in the room, asked the room, do we want to see the videos? If the majority of the room wanted to see the videos, by all means, I'm sure Jeanette would have accepted that, and the collective would have accepted that, and we would have watched the videos and get down to business. Or if the room voted not to see the videos, we should have just moved on to the next part of the business. He decided to take an adjournment for 30 minutes and then returned and said they intended to still finish the meeting at 12:30, i.e. shaving further time off for the questions, which entirely again suited their agenda.
Yeah, Claire, it felt like they were doing everything to kind of just buy time, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he came back, he said roll VT or whatever, but it was clear that they were going to go through with the video, and that it is exactly as Martin said, they wanted to waste time and they didn't want... We kind of... I don't know, talking about it feels pointless, because as soon as you get to Ross Desmond's statement, you know that the whole thing was orchestrated in a way that we've talked about already, and that they wanted that level of disruption to be able to blame on people in the room.
I wonder, right, and here's the thing. So Jeanette Finlay, who is obviously known to the board because she's been involved in some of the great successes of the Celtic support over the years, Bernard Higgins and all that stuff. She's part of the Celtic Trust. She's someone who vehemently is against the board, and rightly so. Back her up with that. If it had been a man wearing a suit who came from the back of the room to ask the same question, I think they would have treated them very differently.
Quite probably. They would have seen Jeanette making her way to the front desk. Oh, fuck you.
She had to get by me and Claire. She was like climbing over us.
I've got to say, I've known Jeanette many years. Totally admire her. What she done today was just absolutely tremendous.
Yeah.
And that takes a whole lot of bravery. So absolutely fair play to her for that.
But I think everyone in that room is a shareholder or a proxy of a shareholder, and I just think that obviously everyone isn't treated created. Jesus, everyone isn't treated equally, Claire.
No, absolutely, of course not. I mean, you see that somebody shouted just towards the end of the meeting, "This isn't the Tory party conference" or something.
That's right. Which actually, when you then go into Desmond's statement, very, very Tory party conference-esque, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's she was well within her right, according to the Articles of Association. He kept saying, "You're not allowed." They don't know the rules. They're making it up as they go along, and they just think because they are the men in suits sat behind a desk that they can say whatever they want. There
was a very simple solution. Take a vote in the room. Do we want to watch the videos? If the room vote yes, we do. We'll watch the videos. If the room vote no, we don't. Move on.
Yeah.
Move on and get to business. So what happened there is the video, they came back and they proceeded with the videos. At that point, people made the decision to leave the room while the videos were on, because we don't need to listen, or we don't want to listen to how great they are when the reality is very, very different. I could hear some of the videos. I've got to say, not all of it. At one point, Peter Law said, as a board, we don't do too bad. I always thought they wanted to be world class in everything we do, but now we're just no bad.
No bad, aye.
But their salaries don't reflect no bad. Their salaries are very, very good. So there's a bit of a mismatch there. I picked up on that, but we went back to our seats. And what people, I've spoke to Lawwell over the years, not for a while, he's a complete and utter hothead. He is a total hothead. He cannot control his temper. So as the people moved back into the room, he couldn't help himself to say, we'll welcome our guests back into the room. They've never been to an AGM in their life, which is a lie. But we'll let them take their seats. And then he muttered, I didn't know this, I've just found out, he muttered under his breath, look at them, not one of them's over 20. And I thought, just how vindictive. By the way, for the voice, I don't actually think there was anybody under 30. But it was just a wee sly.
It's a classist
to undermine the people who stand up to him. And I just thought it summed the man and the people up. Utterly pathetic.
Such disdain for the working class, such disdain for just normal Celtic fans.
Women, young people, anyone who's not one of him.
I looked at it, honestly, I don't think there was anybody under 30. And if there was a few.
Look, we were all stood outside in the corridor when we all left for that video. And if you look around I don't think I saw a single.
By the way, know that it matters. Anybody under 20's get as much a right as anybody else. So the comment was just pathetic, and a guy who, like say, marking a guy who just cannot keep his temper in check. It's ego.
Yeah, the video was long as well.
Yeah, I obviously was particularly interested in the bit where they started like waxing lyrical about the women's team being in the Champions League, and obviously my question was about the fact that they're basically taking money and we've got a bench of teenagers to take on Rangers, and that's just one example. Obviously that's my particular axe to grind, but it's just an example of the propaganda that they're spouting. And I was doing the same as you, kind of peering around to see what they kind of had to say, even though I didn't want to be in the room when it was happening.
Those videos could have been easily published online for people in the room to watch at their leisure later on tonight or over the weekend or whatever. They did not need to be played there, so Jeanette's proposal was entirely fair.
Absolutely.
But that's what happened. So we've obviously made our way back into the room to those wee jibes, which again have just further pissed people off, and again raised the tensions further. When they had kept him to himself, he could have maybe tried to restore some sort of.
I don't think he wanted.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Of course, it was designed to provoke. So
I heard just one bit from the video. I heard it was Lowell, and he was like, "Look, we want the club to be successful. We're all Celtic supporters here," and I just thought. It just sends a shiver down my spine. You're not the same as me, you cunt.
They support each other more than they support Celtic.
We should highlight that Martin O'Neill was there, and he got a rapturous round of applause that went on for maybe 90 seconds, even 2 minutes. Fully deserved. He's isolated from that, and it was good to see. Elena Sadiku looked shocked.
I interact with Elena Sadiku on a weekly basis, and I don't think I've ever seen her look more uncomfortable.
I don't know, Elena, but surely she can perfectly understand fans' frustrations, given her team and her side and her squad are suffering just as much as the men's team. I
suspect she shares many of them.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to what you can class as the sort of main event. Ross Desmond reads out a statement from me and my father, and I think
that's enough of the accent.
Okay, I think someone shouted at that point, "Where is your father?" I mean, if this is because he was talking about, he opened up. I've got some of it transcribed. I can kind of read through bits, but other parts of it wasn't. But he said along the lines of, "This is such an important AGM because I want to address some of the negativity surrounding the club." It's like, where the fuck is your dad?
Aye. Well, the irony of Lawwell muttering, they don't usually come to the AGMs, while then passing over to Dermot Desmond's son to read another statement out on his behalf, when the guy himself hasn't been to an AGM for many, many years. I think one in the last 20 odd or something like that.
Someone did shout out, "What's your dad's tea time?" which I thought was quite funny. Right, okay, let's... We kind of touched on it, but Claire, what, in terms of the actual number one, the delivery of the speech, we'll talk through what was the contents, but the delivery of the speech, what was your thoughts?
I mean, it was full of, have you said this, it was full of venom. It was intended, the tone of it, obviously if you see this transcript you can't tell how it was delivered, but it was delivered with an intention to provoke. I was sort of starting to take notes, and I started scribbling away in my notebook. I literally could not write fast enough the number of inflammatory things that he was saying. Everything that came out of his mouth shocked me, and I wanted to write it down, and I'm glad that we've managed to get it written down from somewhere else, because I literally can't write that fast. I don't know shorthand. It was wild that was what they had decided to kick the whole thing off with.
It was an utter disgrace. It follows on from the statement that released after Brendan Rodgers' departure by Desmond. The statements that have been released about the Green Brigade, written clearly by Desmond, and now we've got this statement again by Desmond. It's attack after attack after attack. It's a guy who is obviously feeling the pressure. And instead of listening to the support, he's battening down the hatches and fighting back.
That's what these people do. It's a typical.
It's Trumpian. It's fake news, because he starts. I'll read out some of the. I'm not going to go into too much depth because it's a long speech, but he starts by saying, "Times of challenging call for unity. Times for challenge call for unity and understanding, as well as honest responses to reasonable questions. Yet there are those out there who seem to lie in wait for any opportunity and any small opening to stir up toxicity around the club." Right, so that's a shot of the supporters having basically an opinion. He's connecting any sort of negativity with toxicity. What would we gain from being toxic around the club?
That's what I thought. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, when I heard that, only minutes before, I'm sort of begging and pleading for tickets for St Mirren on Saturday night because there's a shortage of them. I'm not going to go to St Mirren on Saturday night and pay 39 quid or whatever it is to then hope that there's toxicity surrounding the club. I'm going there, and I go every other week to hope for the best for the club so that they can win trophies and progress. I'm not in any way seeking toxicity. I just want the best for Celtic.
100%. And that's the point. Why, the idea that we want Celtic to...
The disdain in that statement and the condescension, and he talked about how, people who criticise the economic running of this club basically are stupid and don't understand anything about money because they haven't got billions of pounds like we have. And the fact there was another couple of bits where I can't remember.
We don't understand the disparity in European finances. The irony of that after just getting fucked by Midtjylland 2 weeks ago in a 12,000 seater stadium.
So on that, right, those who talk about the club not having kicked on in Europe since 2003 ignore the enormous change in the financial landscape of football in that period. Do we? It has created a gap which keeps growing and challenges any club playing in a smaller European league. Most supporters understand that, of course, clubs can still punch above their financial weight, and we should aspire to that. But if you swing and miss, you risk the very stability of the club, and that would be profoundly irresponsible. That is such shite, right? We've got £8 million quid in the bank. We didn't buy anyone in Europe this season. We spent, 10-15 million quid? If we had spent... We're not asking for them to spend hundreds of millions of quid. Celtic could spend a small amount of money the right way, which would bring us up in par with some of these teams. He speaks to us like it's money. We can't deal with it. We can't bridge that gap.
And you guys don't understand, and you'll never understand.
It was almost a repeat of the statement that was released following the close of the transfer window, but just delivered with more venom. That was all it was. It was yous are stupid, you just don't understand.
Yeah.
It speaks to their complete lack of ambition.
And also, this is the thing I was saying to Claire as well, that you always note with this. The financial independence of this club was jeopardised in the mid-90s, and we must never allow ourselves to fall into that position again. We constantly strive to improve, to become competitive, blah, blah, blah. Our model is far from perfect, but for the most part, it's served the club well over the past 20 years. And then it starts talking about mismanagement, improving this club step by step systematically. And then the classic... We will not be railroaded by those whose only vacation in life is to be anti-establishment, and by those who try to degrade the club. Our focus is on what matters.
That's our only focus.
Anti-establishment. Can sign me up. Cheers, mate.
He might have us there.
I also particularly took note of the way that it was the real politicians thing of they've targeted members of this board, and they've done this before, but members of this board and their families, calling the support bullies, like we're the ones who are in a position to bully them. It's hilarious. What are you talking about?
The very notion of a member of the Desmond family calling anyone a bully is fucking obscene.
It's absurd.
That statement you just read there, Chris, about not contributing to society is probably one of the most single disgusting things I've ever heard by a Celtic board member. I actually never heard that. I think I was just in too much shock listening to the statement, and then I saw it just as I was coming in here, and I had to verify it was actually said before I came on here. I had to get somebody to say, did he actually say that?
Yeah.
I think that is fucking unbelievable.
We will not be railroaded by those whose only vocation in life is to be anti-establishment and for those who try to denigrate the club. Criticism and advice are welcome, but the right of every supporter. But some of what we've seen recently is not constructive. It is destructive and cynical. All it does is strengthen our resolve to protect the integrity of Celtic Football Club. The attempts to dehumanise and then vilify the executive board are shameful. These are people with families. He's literally just said in the statement, in the paragraph before, that
the people who got their doors kicked in, first thing in the morning don't have families.
Yeah.
I think it really kicked off when he mentioned the behaviour of certain sections increasingly brings the club and its fan base into disrepute. The incident a few weeks ago, the Falkirk match, was symptomatic of why these people are bullies and they hijack. We cannot allow to define them to define who we are.
A complete and utter coincidence that that Falkirk match had a demonstration, the largest of its kind ever, outside Celtic Park, with his dad in attendance. And for the first time, as far as I'm aware, there was chants against Dermot Desmond that night as well. So I'm sure it is a complete and utter coincidence that an incident then happened that night that they've saw fit to attempt to close down the Green Brigade section. If anybody, and I'm sure we'll go on in this, I don't want to move away from the AGM yet, but just with that statement in mind, if there was anybody in any doubt as to who was behind the recent attack in the Green Brigade, the doors going in, the complete and utter disproportionate response for the club to an extremely minor incident. If there was any doubt as to who was behind that, then they should be left in absolutely none now. This is the actions of a complete and utterly vindictive, hutton man who's wanted to hit back.
This is a billionaire who is using his power to break down people's doors and to... Claire, come in. I don't want to say too much.
You've run out of things to say. I'm not sure. It's difficult, isn't it? Because we are all reacting live to this, and I think we're all still processing it. And over the next couple of days, our thoughts might become more fully formed. I think for me, the main takeaway was just that point that I think I made earlier, that this is the inevitable conclusion of a board, an arrogant board, and a man essentially who refuses to. If you refuse any meaningful engagement and if you refuse to work with people, this is where things get to. And it was just a bit loud in a meeting at the end of the day, but they're going to play this like there was some kind of violence at play. You just know that they're going to spin it in that kind of way. Yeah, but I also think that what I think... When I say violence, I mean actual violence. Just
what I think is... So I think there'll be two people. People will look at this in different ways, right? And I think people will say, "Well, we didn't get to ask questions, right?" Do you think, Martin? I'll go to you. I'll come to you as well, Claire. Do you think if I went up and asked some of the questions that I had planned, and you'd asked some of the questions you had planned, and Claire had asked some of the questions, do you think we would have got any sort of resolution to those questions? Do you think we would get answers? No,
we wouldn't have done, because the collective have already met these guys. Aside from Lowell and Desmond, Collective met these guys a month ago, and I'd imagine the questions that we're going to be asked today were of a similar nature to the questions we posed them that night at Celtic Park. I personally, part of me's quite gutted about not getting to confront them and ask questions related to recent developments. I was really keen to put them on the spot, but to be frank, I was never going to get that opportunity. It became quite clear for the moment that the AGM opened, they were never going to let the Q&A happen. No, it wasn't happening. They decided they were not facing up to support that, did they?
No, absolutely. Claire, it just, as we've said, it just felt like it was a setup.
Yeah, I mean, as we were going in, I don't think, because I said we'd spoken before, Martin, and I'd said I've got a question, and I had a question about the women's team and the underinvestment there, and I thought maybe I'll get a chance, maybe I won't, and you sort of said, oh, you'll probably get a chance. Like the full, it was not until we went into the room that we realised that it was game over, but it was very quickly apparent that it was a setup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you that's not what you were anticipating. That's not the impression I got anyway, Martin.
No, and I think we should again highlight the fact that it was just some people booing in a meeting, an AGM. If Peter Lawwell wanted, if he used any, this is supposed to be a guy who's like an experienced kind of negotiator, and he knows exactly how he can control a room, and he's a man of integrity, and he's suave, and he's James Bond.
He's not. Listen, I've been in meetings with Peter Law, and he's fucking ranted and raved like a lunatic. He is a hothead.
Yeah.
His reaction does not surprise me. I don't know if I've maybe mentioned it to you guys, but he is a hothead. He cannot control his temper. So again, I'm not surprised that he had those wee digs and he lost the room.
Oh, also, I just want to say, Michael Nicholson was looking like a scared little schoolboy sitting there with his head bowed.
I'm utterly embarrassed for him.
What did I do?
Utterly embarrassed for him.
Yeah. Do you think he can come back from this? In terms of, I think the board will have to do something, because this is the point I wanted to bring in, that I think there'll be a certain section of the support who will say that was unruly and that's not how these kind of men in suits are more intelligent than me and we should do what they say, sort of thing. And then there'll be the members of the support who'll be like, that's exactly what you need to do. We need to take it to them. People say stuff like, well, what can you do? This is what you can do. And I think it has to garner some sort of response.
In a functioning boardroom, his days should be numbered. His days should have been numbered a fucking long time ago. In fact, he shouldn't have got the job, actually. But, as the months and years have progressed, he's so obviously demonstrated he's clearly at his depth. So in a normal functioning organisation and boardroom, he'd be finished. He would be finished. However, we don't have that. We have a guy, a principal shareholder who, to my mind, is out of control. And what he does in these situations, we've saw it before, is instead of bounty pressure and come to the natural conclusion to part ways, he'll double down. He'll put his arms round Michael Nicholson the way he did Neil Lennon, and it completely fucked our season in the season we don't talk about. And I don't doubt he'll do this again. He'll protect Nicholson because he's his guy, and Nicholson's not just going to walk away for a salary like that.
£700,000 a year, aye.
That's more than that, isn't it?
It's like 800.
But remember, he's no bad.
Aye, it's not bad.
It's not bad.
Claire, in the regard to, this is the thing, billionaires are people with egos who think they deserve everything, and, fuck them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this just echoes that wider the wider politics that we're all engaged with as well. Like, the people with the money will fight to the bitter end, and unfortunately they have the resources to do it, and they're in a position to be able to do it, and we have to keep shouting loud, and we have to do something, and nothing changes unless things change. And it's very frustrating to hear people kind of wanting change and then refusing to actually stand up and do anything about it. So I'd urge anyone listening to this, honestly, if you'd been in that room today, you would be as angry as we are.
I'm glad the transcript is going to be out there, but what I'm really glad about is that there seems to be a video kicking about chats and stuff like that, which hopefully will get leaked, because the transcript is shocking.
Yeah. The
video demonstrates the complete and utter venom, the viciousness which was behind the words, and I think that I hope everybody sees it and sees right through it for what went on today.
Absolutely, venom, disgust, disdain, and the Green Brigade. Some horrific stuff happened yesterday. Martin, do you want to talk us through some of just your views on it, your thoughts?
Before I go into that, before we move on to the AGM, people will naturally assume, like they always do, that was the fucking Green Brigade today, and that was. I could probably count in one hand the amount of Green Brigade members there, maybe slightly more than that. I'd need to go back, but that was no the Green Brigade dominating what happened today. So
I just want to give you this platform, because this is obviously going out to everyone. Is there a frustration that the Green Brigade is being seen as the leaders of this as opposed to the Celtic collective?
Aye, I can understand that, but listen, for the absolute avoidance of doubt, I'm the sole Green Brigade representative in the collective steering group of about 21.
There you go.
I'm the only Green Brigade representative. I'm representative for the boys. But just for the absolute avoidance doubt, this is no the Green Brigade pushing it. Clearly, I'm active in it. I'm passionate about it. It's something I've wanted. Not necessarily as an anti-board movement. I wanted a fan union like this for most of my adult Celtic supporting life. But it's not led by Green Brigade. Green Brigade are obviously an active participant, but we're not leading it. I can understand to an extent people thinking otherwise. I
mean, we're in it. Lots of people are in it. Like,
exactly.
Fan media's in it.
But But hopefully that clears it up. And like I said, people just say it was a Green Brigade today and all that sort of stuff. But I'd like to, like I say, just make it clear that as much as we were involved, we were not leading it. So yeah, I've moved on for your question.
No,
so I think my head's still fried.
I know, absolutely. But just in terms of everything that's happened, obviously, with the club coming out with statements and just everything that happened in the Falkirk game.
Aye, so easy to assume, obviously this is kicked off the Falkirk game. It goes back before that, to be honest. In the summer, Celtic appointed Mark Hargreaves, who has come straight out of the police to head of security and operations role. We were immediately quite concerned about that because as much as Ronnie Hawthorne was ex-police, he was out of the police a long time, so chances are his relationships and his contact book weren't quite as fresh as they once were.
Yeah.
Mark Hargreaves is a guy who climbed the ladder quite quickly at Police Scotland and has probably got a contact book as long as your arm. So we were nervous about that right from the outset and discussed it. And we met him after he'd been appointed, a few weeks into his appointment, along with George Campbell, the head of legal, and a couple of others for the club. And we explicitly said, look, it's going to take a lot to trust you. We want to work progressively for the better of everybody, but there is some suspicions, and we hope that us sitting here with you isn't sort of thrown back in our face. I think we immensely regret that, and our worst fears are coming to pass here.
Yeah.
So we had a suspended sentence given to us, I think maybe that week or the week before. We went and met him at the start of August. We learned of it the day before the first game of the season. I thought, fucking hell, what a way to start the season. A fresh start and all that sort of stuff. That was a message we were given. We gave that message to the SL Lodge during the summer. Look, things have been rocky, but it's still 20th anniversary. We want to get a fresh start. We want to support the team positively and all that sort of stuff. And then on the Friday we get fucked with a suspended sentence. That suspended sentence in the main was down to, you recall on the trophy day in May, they had their flag display. They denied us having our tifo that day. They made their own flag display. So I think 20 odd supporters, just to sort of add colour and do a thing, we lined the north stand with Palestine flags.
Yes.
History tells you Celtic don't like the Palestine flag being waved at Celtic Park. We've felt that obviously a couple of years ago in terms of getting banned for that as well. And we get a suspended sentence for that. There is no, and there remains no avenue to contest or appeal or anything in place. We said to them in August we want to contest that, and there's still no avenue to this day. There's still no disciplinary process in place.
Are they saying that it's banned because it's a political statement?
They said because people moved out the section, moved from the standing section to the north stand, which happens all over the stadium.
If it was any other flag,
mate, if 20 people lined there with a Champions flag,
aye.
In the first game of the season, with the tifo for John Clark,
yeah, beautiful.
People had to go to the Lisbon Lions stand to facilitate that.
Yeah,
there's no issue when it's Celtic or Celtic flags or Champions flags or stuff that they're comfortable with. There's no issues whatsoever with people leaving the section. People leave their sections at half time and go over. It's the most accessible stadium in Europe, I think.
Yeah.
There was no issue us leaving the section in August for the John Clark tifo, thankfully. But there's an issue with people leaving the section when there's Palestine flags.
Yeah,
that speaks to the true
meaning and nature.
Exactly. So with that sort of hanging over us,
and also just waiting for you to do something like that, so that
Aye. So that also takes us to the Falkirk game, where there's the most minor of incidents happen with a guy showing his ticket, and at least to a bit of a to and fro with a steward, and people, it's that whole domino effect. People hear there's a situation, somebody leaves, somebody else leaves, and before you know it, people think there's something serious has been done and they've left. But actually, by the time most of the people who left their seats and got to the concourse, it all sort of finished, and if they went back to their seats anyway, I sort of stayed at the front of the banner. But it was that way I was kind of wondering what was going on, and I noticed whenever he was come back, they were sort of laughing at how ridiculous and stupid and like how much nothing happened. So it was completely forgot. We're like, oh, okay, that was daft. Like, let's all get back to fucking supporting the team again. And so that was it. It wasn't even mentioned, wasn't spoke about. And I caught up with JP in Midland. And actually, the basis of the conversation with JP was like, look, obviously with the whole protest stuff, we want to, as much as we're still opposing the board and we'll still continue that campaign, we would still like to return to some sort of normality in terms of supporting the team. And he said, I will take that back, but I've got to tell you there's an issue developing around the situation at Falkirk last week. And I was like, what do you mean? What situation at Falkirk last week? And he's like, I remember just after half time. I was like, fucking hell, I forgot about that. And he's like, there's some complaints coming in or something like that. So that was a Thursday night, and I sort of told the boys, and then we went to the game and forgot about it again, assumed nothing comes of it. And then, you're coming back for Denmark, you've just been fucking pumped again, you've got you're shattered, and you're like, why the fuck did I just spend £500 watching it again, knowing I'm probably going to do it again in 2 weeks? And you're questioning life choices, and as you're just coming into Glasgow, you're getting an email through saying you're banned. Again, no
right to reply.
No right to reply. No, like, we'd like to hear your side of the story. What happened here? Come in and show us what happened. You're banned. Yeah. Just on the word Apollos.
Claire, your thoughts? I mean, when you hear it like that as well, I hadn't quite heard the ins and outs of it. We hadn't spoken about you telling that story as if to the people who are actually involved. I'd heard people say it was a nothing, but it's like anything. It's very different when you see it written down to someone going, we literally didn't think it was anything. Like we'd gone back to our seats. We were like, you said to JP, what are you talking about? Like, that's wild to me that they, I mean, it's wild and also not wild. Like they will take any tiny little thing and they will make up. It's complete like cop behaviour just to make things up as soon as they go along. Like, we can use this, we can use this, we can use that.
There's a very easy understand the what's the word, desire almost to think there's no smoke without fire. Something must have went down. For the avoidance of doubt, we've vehemently denied their allegations online. I'll vehemently deny their allegations. We've offered to go in and speak to them and give our side of the story. We've got our own evidence. People thankfully took videos and pictures of what happened.
Good.
There. We've offered to show them. They've declined. They're going completely on the word of the police. They've not asked us. We've offered to come in and say, look, why don't you hear us out? Give us a sort of fair trial, if you like. They've declined. They're not interested. This is 100% an opportunity being seized upon for the absolute highest within the club.
The highest.
We know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
And he's tapped in to the contacts of the newly appointed Mark Hargreaves, who's obviously really keen to make an impression with his new gaffer, and it's fucking Desmond, think we'll do what he says. And it's been a stitch up of the fucking highest proportions. I honestly, if you were to tell people about it, I don't think they would believe you. There's people probably listening to this and I think he's a fucking paranoid wreck.
Yeah. I mean, see, the fact of the matter is, do you think it's going to lead to a permanent ban?
Well, that's what they're set out today. What's happened is Desmond's been there at Falkirk game. He saw the demo, he saw the momentum the collective's gathering, and he's tried to rip the head off the snake. He thinks it's the Green Brigade, and he thinks if we get rid of them, the collective will fall on its arse.
Yeah.
That's the tactic, that's the ploy, that's what their end game is.
And just to bring it back to the meeting, that's part of the plan today, to use what happened today as part of the ammunition that they can then...
But hopefully what people can see, in a way I'm fucking disgusted at what gets said today by Desmond, but in a way I'm thinking to myself, just now that I'm starting to sort of calm down a wee bit, I'm thinking to myself, surely people can now see this for what it is. Anybody who had any doubts about this, and we've been trying online to sort of articulate that this is a fucking serious situation developing here. And I almost understand people are probably a bit bored of it and think it's fucking Green Brigade v the board, it's tedious, we've been there. The shock factor has almost been removed. When we first get banned, like Palestine, all that sort of stuff, there was a shock factor and people were interested and followed it. I'm worried that people just think this will sort itself out and we'll be back to normal in a month or so. They're absolutely intent on trying to finish the collective, trying to finish the Green Brigade. And I would appeal to people, like I say, I understand it's boring. The Green Brigade will fight our battles and we'll stand up for ourselves. But the wider support, when we come together as we have, is fucking formidable. And we do fucking need it now more than ever.
Absolutely. And obviously what happened yesterday with people getting their doors kicked in, unforgivable.
Shocked, disgusted. I say shocked, I shouldn't be shocked because we've seen it before, but we thought that those days were done.
Yeah.
Just a dreadful tactic to use for a breach of the peace. This won't see any courtroom.
No.
But what they've done is they've created a headline and they've fucked a guy over and gave him a twos up. And they'll do that. I don't doubt that they'll do that with others to come. The side that people don't see, so they never chapped the door. They never gave the guy the chance to come to the door and come down to the station themselves. They deliberately kicked the door in.
This is for, in their terms, breach of the peace.
Yeah. So 7 or 8 police officers just kicked the door in, took the door off its hinges, and took the guy down to the station, and kept him in for about an hour, charged him with breach of the peace and let go. That shows how fucking ridiculous it is. We got a couple of our members along to the guy's house when we just heard what had happened. We're actually, we're used to this sort of stuff in the past, so we're quite kind of well set up and well organised to sort of deal with this. So we managed to get right away get somebody over to the house and try and fix the door. The guy who went in saw the boy's dad, who's ill, shivering because there's no door. It's about fucking -4 outside. There's no front door. He's ill. They've taken his phone off him, his dad's phone off him, despite his dad pleading with him, saying, look, I need that for medical emergencies, please keep my phone here. And they took it despite his pleas and left him there, shocked, shaken, freezing, alone. And then we've also got the mother on the phone who's not in the family home, completely emotional, upset, worried. Her husband is sitting there, freezing to death, fucking ill, and her boy's just been taken a jail cell for absolutely fuck all. Thankfully he was out, and thankfully, like I say, there won't be any trial. It won't get that far.
What a waste of time, if nothing else. What a waste of money, if nothing else. And complete and utter horror show for his dad. And where are we living? What's happening?
There was other visits that day. One guy in particular was visited at an address he's never lived at. Doesn't live at, never lived at. It was a relative's address. The only connection he has to that address is his season ticket. It's registered there.
Well, what does that tell you?
So it doesn't take fucking Cluedo to work out where they've got it. They are up to their fucking eyeballs in this. Up to their eyeballs in it.
Claire, your thoughts? Surprised? No,
it's just fascist, isn't it? It's creeping, and I think it's
sinister.
It's sinister.
It's really easy as well to look at something like that and think, well, it'll never happen to me.
Well, that's it.
This is one of those examples of just take note of what's happening around you, because this doesn't end here necessarily.
They're doing it at the Green Brigade. They'll never do it to me or my pals.
Nah, exactly, mate. See that. I try and stay off fucking Twitter and all that sort of stuff. But the amount of people saying, "Oh, how come I'm all right?" I'm like, "Aye, well, do you know what? You might not be in the future, and if it's no you, it might be your boy, it might be your wee lassie."
What happens if they start taking pictures of people at protests and then just banning their season ticket?
Exactly.
This involves all of us. When things like that happen to anyone,
but it's also not just Celtic, because if a football club can collude with the police to do that stuff, all that Celtic are doing is normalising that type of behaviour on part of the police. In a wider context, if you want to look at it like that.
Well, I bumped into Mark Hargreaves before the AGM the day and had a conversation with him, calmly, I've got to say. And asked him what he was aware of and did he know, and he denied all involvement. But it's a blatant lie. We know, I won't disclose how we know, but we know for a fact they are aware of what happened, and we know for a fact that they are aware that there's further coming down the track.
Ominous,
and
I'm worried.
It gets you really riled up. Right, okay. I think we'll probably leave it there. But
there'll be more to be said over
over the next few days and few weeks. And the collective have a meeting coming up where we're going to get together and
Monday. So I was concerned, obviously, with a new manager coming in, and the desire clearly there will be to get behind him and hope for the best, but we absolutely must keep the eye on the ball here. Today is just another fucking massive reminder as to what we're up against. We cannot let them off the hook. We absolutely cannot let them off the hook. So please come to that meeting if you're a signatory, and we'll come together, and as a collective, a wider group, we'll agree on a way forward. But the attendance is an absolute must. It's maybe the most important meeting of them all. So let's see what we can come up with moving forward.
Absolutely, we'll definitely be there, and we look forward to it. Well, it's been a pleasure to speak to you, Martin, as always.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for your support. Anybody listening, thank you for your support. We might need it more than ever.
Yes, we'll rally the troops as best we can. But always class to speak to you, Martin. Claire Wilde, a joy as always.
Thank you very much.
From Claire, from Martin, from myself, Chris Gallagher, this has been The Reaction, and we'll speak to you down the road.